Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your agreeable host, Scott Botman, and this is episode number 94. Joining me to discuss Star Wars Andor, episode 6, is my original co pilot on the Drunken Gungan, Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how's it going out there, man?
Good, great to be back. Missed the last recording. Was out with the family on a weekend trip, so good to be here. And yeah, we don't have our usual Wookiee co-pilot with us this week. We have a special visit. Looks like inspection.
Oh, attention! It's Commander Kyle.
Just call me Clem. Just call me Clem, guys. It's a kickback, relaxed atmosphere around here. We're digging Andor. We're a little bit more on the rebellion side right now. I'm really enjoying Andor. It's been phenomenal. I'm looking forward to just having fun to talk about a very amazing episode of television.
Yes, it was very amazing. And Kyle, we're so glad you're here to talk to us about it. And plus, we can ask you for your initial overall thoughts about Andor as a series as a whole so far, because we haven't had a chance to do that yet. The reason that we haven't is a very sad real world reason, because astute listeners will recall that Kyle lives down in Florida. And so they had a little bit of a storm recently down there. Kyle, I'm glad to hear that you're okay. How'd y'all pull through?
Well, all kidding aside, it was a very major storm. I got very lucky. The area up until 24 hours before the storm made landfall, it was aimed right where I live. It was landing right. I'm in Bradenton, which is just south of the St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area, and it was headed right for us. It made that shift south and hit more of the Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Port Charlotte area, and I was just down in Port. That's only about 40 miles from where I live. I was down in the Port Charlotte area actually earlier today, and it's still really bad down there. And so I count my blessings, and I've got a roof over my head. All my loved ones came through. I do know have some friends and family though that did lose their homes and are dealing with that ramification. So it has been a sense of reality. It's been one of the reasons why, because I also am the publisher and master editor of the Fandom Podcast Network, and that's why we've been a little behind in our podcast in the last couple of weeks. Yeah. But I appreciate everybody showing their understanding. We're getting a little bit back on track. My internet and power still fluctuates every now and then, more my internet than anything, but yikes. I think it's finally been settling down, but it's made for some interesting times, and it's definitely in its own way a very life altering experience. Just even though I did not maybe get as hit, I know I didn't get hit as hard as so many others, but when you're that close to that destruction level and that kind of thing, it's eye opening, and it just makes you count your blessings even more.
Yeah, we're so glad to hear that you escaped relatively unscathed, and our thoughts and prayers for all the other survivors out there.
I will say this: hurricane wind howling outside your window. I'm sorry, Nathan, but it puts your Chewy call to shame.
Yes. However, have you ever heard Nathan snore? I'm just going to say that and leave it there.
Well, I'm assuming, Scott, that everybody's heard Nathan snore that's been in the same room with him because nobody else gets any sleep.
That's right. Yep.
Okay,
the only person in this orbit that comes close to his volume is Cat Cedar, Kevin's longtime buddy there. Cat gives him a run for his money when it comes to snoring. Woo.
Yeah, but we all love Cat. I mean, you can't.
We do.
Cat.
We do.
Yeah. But Chewy Filoni clone, whatever he wants to go by this week.
Filoni baloney.
We love you, Nathan.
My favorite one of those was when we were at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. Somebody asked to get a picture with Dollar Store George Lucas because there was a guy cosplaying George Lucas. And then they pointed to Nathan and said, "Can we also get Discount Dave?" I was like, Discount Dave. That's it. That's the name.
Yeah, that's his new Twitter handle going forward.
Double D.
Yeah. Yep. Discount Dave. Good times. All right. Well, Kyle, so having watched all of Andor so far, how do you feel about it as a Star Wars series?
I am absolutely loving this. I have made no secret of my love for Rogue One. It right now ranks probably third in my Star Wars movie fandom, just behind Empire and the original Star Wars film. And it could creep in there ahead of the original Star Wars film at times too. What's happening though in Andor has been just absolutely phenomenal. And Star Wars like we've never seen Star Wars, and I think it's been needed for a very, very long time. And I think
Yeah.
it's also showing Star Wars fans that you can have Star Wars and not have anything Jedi going on, and you don't have to have these certain always seem to be present Star Wars tropes or acts, and that's still not, and you can still make great Star Wars. I think too that you don't have to necessarily have somebody who loves Star Wars be a director or writer of Star Wars. Tony Gilroy is very much showing this. You just have to have somebody who respects the material, and he does do that, and he does that very well. And the biggest thing for me, guys, and I've said this everywhere I've been on talking about Andor, getting back to on-site filming. I love the volume. I think it's a great piece of technology. I think it was great that we had that for during COVID period to help with filming and keeping some of these shows being able to stay on track. But nothing beats actually being physically present in the area, filming on set. And this show is absolutely breathtaking with its cinematography, the set pieces, the set designs, even how with the coloring of it. Everything about this show is visually just as drawing you in as much as the story of Andor himself is drawing it in. And I got to say it right now, I've been a Stellan Skarsgård fan, but this might be my favorite performance of his in a very long time.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I mean, in this week's episode 6 of Andor, seeing the TIE fighter pilot climbing into his TIE, ready to launch, while the Eye meteor storm is going off behind him in the sky. Oh my gosh, it was breathtaking.
Yeah. Another thing too that I've really loved is the fact that we are seeing the kind of behind the scenes politics of both sides, both of the rebellion and both of the Empire. And I'm really, really liking what we're seeing on the Empire side, because it's not what we think. It's not this machine that the Empire has always been we're seeing that there's this internal struggle for power within factions within the Empire, which is very interesting. We're seeing the paranoia of people like Mothra and everything that's going on there. Where is she being followed? I have a new driver. What's going on with her husband? What's going on with her daughter? It's such an interesting point in the Star Wars world to visit that I don't feel we've ever really fully gotten to visit. We've just gotten a little taste of it. And it's Star Wars for both an older generation and I think and for a new generation too, to be kind of come in and get, I know people might take this the wrong way, but it's the only way I can really word it. A true, more mature Star Wars. One that's not afraid to get into the dirt, get into the mud, and add a little bit of the war to the star.
Yeah, totally. Well, there's a whole generation of genre fans, multiple generations of genre fans now, that have been raised on things like The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and so on and so forth, that definitely have a dark, gritty, serious tone, despite all their fantastical elements like zombies and dragons. So, the idea that something like Star Wars could take science fiction and move it into that same type of space, or if you will, space fantasy, and move it into that same type of gritty realism. That's what today's genre fans really live for. They like that, and I think sometimes the tone of the campy, adventure-y Star Wars feature films was a little incongruous to them for the way that they expect genre entertainment to be these days. They accept that a little bit more readily from Marvel films because Marvel has been doing a little bit of the campy adventure feeling much more so than other types of sci-fi and fantasy these days.
No, and I think on the Marvel side too, you are talking about a comic book film, so there's a certain expectations there. But I think even Marvel has been not afraid to diversify of late and explore new things here.
Oh yeah, now that we're 10 years on, Marvel's branching out.
Yeah, but I think this is for Star Wars. This is a branch out that's been needed for decades, and I think it's phenomenal what they're doing right now with it. And I think it's in my opinion, I'll put it this way: it's some of the best modern Star Wars we've ever had. I'm not going to say it's the best show of all time. It's the best Disney Plus show. I have no problem saying that right here, right now. It's the best Disney Plus show. But I can't say it's the best Star Wars thing we've had, but it's up there. It's up there very, very high.
Really good. Yeah, totally. All right. Well, so thanks for your initial thoughts there, Kyle. And Derrick, we're going to jump on into our usual roundtable discussion. So for episode 6 of Andor, The Eye, what did you like most about this episode, Derrick?
So obviously I didn't get to talk with you guys last week on the last recording for episodes 4 and 5, but really what we've kind of gotten and it really helped with this episode 6 as well that I've really enjoyed with is just the character development. What we talk about, right? A lot of times what we felt like kind of been missing even from Rogue One to some degree, but even just from in general the Star Wars movies, and what they've kind of been doing better with this with the Disney Plus series is they're giving time for the characters development, right? So we're getting the characters out here that are trying to do the whole heist thing, right? And that's, I love heist movies. I don't know what it is, but I like it. The whole Rick and Morty.
I'm in.
I'm in. You son of a bitch. So I love that. But yeah, the idea of this is it's just I like that them obviously having the inside player, right? And then having to be able, they've been on this planet for like 2 years, right? 3 years planning for this to happen. And for finally the heist to go off, right? We finally get it. But there's just a lot of things that could potentially go wrong, or things that you would think like, well, why did the bad guys or the security people ever think about this? Like when the heist is going on, but they actually do in this, like, right. Hey, there's like, we pick up their signal, right? The guy that was monitoring the airways picks up the signal and he calls them and they go off, right? And they try to interfere with during the heist, and things go wrong because something has to go wrong. But just that whole, like I said, the attention to Star Wars detail, but just the attention to detail in general, and the development of the characters and the little things that make storytelling good is what I'm getting. And that's, again, what I've really liked and loved about this show the most. And again, this was phenomenal. And then just like you were mentioning earlier with the eye and the passing of these meteors or stars or whatever they are with this event, it's just breathtaking, right? What they're able to do, especially towards the end, as they're trying to make their escape on the shuttle and they're being chased by the TIE fighters. It was just beautiful, right? And just the way they're trying to do it. Like, I'm like, that's another Disney ride we need.
Yeah, totally. Trying to escape from Alandi? That was the name of or Arathi. What was the name of the
I think
planet?
it was Alandi.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up again. Anyway, Kyle, what was your favorite part of this episode?
Well, this episode was just phenomenal. I want to just shout back to episode 5 since I wasn't here for that episode, because I think it ties very well into what episode 6 is. I know a lot of people on the internet were talking about the slowness of episode 5, and yet I think it was an absolutely perfect episode because it gave us details on these characters, and I think it made everything that happened with these characters in episode 6 that much more powerful. So I wanted to make sure I added that in this episode. It's a great heist movie episode. It's got a lot of ramifications, and there's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I want to ask both of your guys' opinions on this. Is it just me, or does it feel like this heist is really the true start of the rebellion, where like this, they've kind of framed this heist as being like, if this didn't happen right, the rebellion might never have really gotten the footing it needed to get started, because that's just kind of the way it felt like to me, especially when the conversations between Mon and
Luthen.
Yeah, and the conversations they had, like, if this went wrong, the rebellion gets shut down before it really truly even gets started.
Scott, you can go first.
I mean, I see where you're coming from with the idea that this is the big kickoff of the rebellion, but unless I misunderstand, the coaxium heist on the Kessel Run in Solo was done for the rebellion, and that was before this, right?
It was, but it's still and I guess let me, because the seeds of the rebellion are there. There's some things that are going on, but this was kind of the thing that really, like, it takes it to another level. It gets it recognized.
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. It's making the biggest splash because stealing coaxium from the
Pikes.
The Pikes, right? Thank you. Stealing coaxium from the Pikes is a big deal in the underworld. But as far as Imperial, Security Bureau is concerned, well, the gangsters fight each other all the time. That would be like Fox News reporting on some gangland hit in Mexico, right? But then this would be like Fox News reporting on a huge bank being robbed, out there in New York City or something. So it's a much bigger deal within the heart of the empire and the elite and the ruling class, because it shows not only that something on a fairly civilized and colonized Imperial world can be hit by these rebels, but also it shows that part of the Imperial war machine is vulnerable to this type of thing. And perhaps worst of all, from the ISB standpoint, and this probably all got covered up, one of the people that assisted the rebels was a turncoat within the Imperial machine itself, Lieutenant Gorn. So they're facing the ramifications of their decisions there in the Empire, but they don't want the general populace to find out about that. And this kind of heist, if you will, is so high profile and was so spectacular to happen with all of this stuff going on. I mean, this is almost Danny Ocean and Friends level of crazy heist, right? Ocean's 11. And so they stole so much money from a galactic standpoint, 80 million credits. They didn't get it all, of course, but it was an astronomical amount of cash that they stole. So yeah, I could see that this would be the thing that, if not the initial beginnings of the rebellion, because obviously it's there with Mon Mothma moving money around and Luthen having all these contacts and Solo and them doing stuff with the Sky Cloud Raiders. It's there, but this is the big moment, and more people will be talking about it. Even people in the Senate chamber were looking at the news reports on their tablets when it was, right after this heist had occurred.
So, in my opinion, it's what kicks off, or basically is the powder keg that explodes, right? To what Scott's saying,
Mhm.
right? But all the little things have been happening, because I mean, we get that earlier when the ISB, I don't know the blonde-haired agent's name, that she's the probably the main ISB person we'll be dealing with in this series. When her and her underling are trying to say, like, there's all these random events happening all over, but they're too random to not be random, right?
Mhm.
And I think one of those events, they don't point it out, is the coaxium. I think there is something to lead to that, right? So, and to your point, Scott, the rebellion's always been there, but I don't think without this event happening, they would have been able to financially continue doing what they were doing, right? Or at least from Mon Mothma and Luthen's point,
Yeah,
where
because
they
Mothma
couldn't
was
be the
telling him,
sponsors
yeah,
anymore, right?
yeah,
So
Mothma was telling him, the money's still there, but it's getting real dangerous to move it around.
yeah. So she's like, so that's the thing, right? It's like, whether or not we still get the rebellion that we know of, obviously that's a what if question, right? Where it'd be like a perfect thing. What happens if this never happens, right? And they don't get the heist? What would the rebellion potentially look like if it would even ever happen, right? We would have a whole different story. So I think it's both of the answers there from you, Scott, and from you, Kyle. I think this is what gets the attention and what officially is allowing the rebellion to continue being what they are, the rebellion. But I think regardless, there still would have been something down the line that would eventually happen at this point somewhere, but it just probably would have been with different people.
The planet is Aldhani,
Aldhani.
Aldhani.
Yep. So Scott, what was your favorite part?
Oh, my favorite part is definitely that scene where the TIE fighter pilot is climbing into his TIE fighter and the eye is happening behind him. And then juxtaposed right after that is when the freighter is trying to climb up through it and the TIE fighters are chasing them. And you get this rainbow effect that is an exact callback to the classic make the jump to light speed as the stars spread out before you. So, in A New Hope, that was the physical, visceral symbol of Luke escaping his, original farm boy beginnings and going on his hero's journey. Then here, it's almost the dark mirror of that. It is Andor going on his hero's journey, but he doesn't have the right kind of hyperdrive to be able to make that jump in the atmosphere. So he's got to go through this literal crucible of all these rocks and this weight crushing down upon him to escape his humble beginnings. It was exactly like Skeen said to him once they arrive on that other planet, and Nemik is getting worked on by the Rigelian doctor, or sorry, Arcalian, the Arcalian doctor, whose name is Quadpaw, by the way, awesome name. He's getting worked on by Dr. Quadpaw, and then Skeen says to Andor, "All people like us know we were born in the hole, and you climb over everybody else to get out." And that was the representation of Andor having to do that by flying through not the stars in this great moment of freedom like Luke and Han. in A New Hope, but flying through literal horribleness as the rocks in the universe try to crush him, and he still manages to power through. So yeah, great stuff. I love that scene. All right. Next question, Kyle. What did you dislike the most about this episode?
Two things, and it's not so much dislike; it's just a little bit of criticism. One, I thought there was aspects of this episode that were very predictable as far as who was going to live, who was going to die. And I'm telling you what, right now, I dislike the fact that I will never ever work with Cassian Andor in my life, because not more than likely I will come out not breathing. Thank you.
Yeah.
The
He's
other
like
thing,
2 for 20.
yeah. The other thing I kind of disliked about the episode, and it's something that I felt was kind of like there's a lot of if you blink you miss it moments in this episode, to where it's like if you just get distracted even for just 30 seconds, you have a pet, a kid or something like that grabs your attention and you turn around, you've missed something, and you've missed a key component. And while it's very cool to have all that, when you have an episode like this, to where if you miss something for 30 seconds, it feels like then you're all of a sudden you're taken out of the rest of the episode completely, whether you rewind it back to catch what you missed or something. So it's hard to get into a flow of an episode unless you're just isolated in a bubble, really watching this episode completely, or with people who all kind of just focus on it through it. And again, I just think that's just making this episode almost a tad bit too busy with, on one hand, it's very cool with all these little things, but on the opposite side of it, it's like, yeah, you better be paying absolute complete attention from the minute it kicks off, or you could get lost or not understand a key plot point very quickly.
Yeah. Derrick, what did you dislike most about this episode?
It's not really about the episode. It's how the way that they formatted the show. And I'm okay if they go this way, because they made it successful with Clone Wars. There seems to be like these multiple arcs, right? That we're kind of getting these 3, at least so far with these first 6 episodes. I feel like it's 2 separate stories, right? 2 arcs. I know they all kind of tie together with Andor, but in the essence, you'd have the first 3 episodes, which we got all at once. And to be fair, if you really just cut out the credits in between, it would just make a really good, solid hour and a half plus of television. And that's the same thing I feel with this one. I feel like I'm loving the show so much, but I'm just not liking where I feel like these half an hour to 40-minute episodes, I feel like it just does a disservice to it, because I feel like if I would just gotten episodes 4, 5, and 6 and been able to watch them back to back to back as one long hour and a half show again, I think would have been better. Because, I'm not saying that the breaking points are bad, but it just, I don't know. It's not like, this was a little bit better. And I could definitely see why they dropped, where people were saying, like, if you didn't watch episodes 1, 2, and 3 kind of back to back, it almost kind of felt like it didn't pace itself right,
Right,
the way they broke it up. And that's where I feel like 4, 5, and 6 is kind of the same thing. Like I said, loving it. But it's one of those things where I will definitely, once this is all said and done, go back and just sometime during Christmas break, when I have a day off, and just watch everything is basically as much as I can back to back, and binge watch it, because I feel like that'll give me a new and better perspective of how great the show is, more than what I'm already loving it, just because that's the way it feels. Like it would be better off giving us an hour and a half, like almost 4, potentially 4 movies.
Yeah.
If they were going to do 12 episodes.
Right. For me, it was the fact that Nemec got killed in this episode. Narratively, it makes sense. Dramatically, it was well done. I'm just sad. I didn't like it. I wanted more from him. I loved his writing. I loved his writing style. I loved how, when Skeen said to the rest of the crew in the cockpit of the freighter, that kid is why we're here doing this. He was absolutely right. People like Nemec are the heart and soul of the rebellion, and it's what makes them into freedom fighters and not terrorists. Over in Rogue One, we have Jyn Erso playing the same function for Cassian's crew when they go to Scarif and steal the Death Star plans. Cassian and his crew,
when they were on Yavin, when she gave the whole speech, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah, Cassian and his crew were a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, cutthroats, and pirates and whatnot, and they could easily have been the partisans that Saw Gerrera and them were working with, except for the kind of thing that that Jyn Erso and then later Princess Leia give to the rebellion as its heart and soul, its spirit.
I think one thing that's very interesting with this whole idea is, too, guys, we're seeing why Cassian prefers to work alone when we see him first in Rogue One. I think they're establishing that, yeah, guess what? It never goes well for the crews that Cassian works with.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, but in a serious matter, it seems like they put Cass. You get the feeling we're going to see Cassian in missions again and again, where he or maybe him and one other person are the sole survivors of these missions, and maybe
eventually he gets K2, so that's okay.
Well,
right?
but again, K2's a droid.
Correct. Well, that's exactly why, right? He likes working with K2 because he's the droid. Because if he blows up, I can fix him and he's okay.
Yeah.
Or even more so, Cassian can program K2 in such ways that he won't do the dumb stuff that Cassian's had to deal with his biological partners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or won't turn against him.
Right. Well, I was considering betrayal as something dumb, but yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So, question 3, Kyle. What connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy in this episode?
I think in this episode, and I think this is something I think I'm really enjoying about Andor, we're seeing a different look at the Star Wars galaxy. We're seeing places we haven't been to. We're seeing aspects of the Star Wars galaxy we never knew about. We didn't know about the Empire basically outsourcing police forces in the outer territories or anything like that. So it's not so much connections you draw with the Star Wars galaxy for me in this show. It's what it's adding to the Star Wars galaxy. Now, obviously, in this episode, you see some TIE fighters, you get some stuff on Coruscant and things like that. But I think, again, what this show is doing so well is it's adding to the galaxy, taking us beyond the ideas of Jedi, beyond the ideas of necessarily the Empire being in full control. We're just seeing how people are trying to get by in day to day, but we're even in the higher end with like Coruscant and everything that's going on with the Senate, the paranoia that is running not only through people who are with the rebellion, but people who are within the Empire themselves. And I think it's learning these new emotions and thoughts that are connecting all this stuff together. And I think when we go after Andor is done and we rewatch, especially the original trilogy, there's going to be a different emotional wavelength. We're going to see certain aspects of both sides, I think, when it's all said and done, that we didn't have before. And I think that's where the connection is. It's growing out that emotional connection and those emotional tethers between at least everything to me within I'm going to say from Solo through Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Totally. For me, the TIE fighters were a big connection. TIE fighters chasing a rebel ship. I mean, come on, you don't get much more Star Wars than that, right? Great connection there. We already mentioned Dr. Quadpaw, a Regelian, just like what's the guy's name that Jon Favreau did the voice for him in Solo? Rio Durant. So just like Rio was an Arcalian, the 4-armed guy, but Dr. Quadpaw also had a little bit of a nod to Maz Kanata because his goggles seem to be of a similar make to the ones that Maz Kanata liked to wear. And then also for me, a big connection was seeing the Imperial Senate, being in the Senate chamber again. For the first time since the prequels, or really since the Clone Wars cartoon series. It was interesting because it was also a bit of a dark mirror of what had happened in the prequels. Because in the prequels, the Senate is a really important place, and it's packed to the gills, and people are debating and yelling and hollering at each other. And when we see Mon Mothma talking about all of the atrocities against the Dorman system, she's almost talking to an empty room. Because everyone has started to realize that the Senate just doesn't matter anymore as Palpatine has more and more of a grip on supreme executive power.
Yeah, it's almost like real politics today.
Well, yes, yeah, exactly. Although, thankfully, at least the United States Senate is a little more important than the Imperial Senate so far. The reformists in Washington are trying to keep it that way, but this is not that kind of podcast. Anyway, yes, but yeah, you're right. It's also an allegory because, George Lucas, who created Star Wars, allegory of the Vietnam War, we've just kind of been going downhill from there. As Ambassador Kosh said in Babylon 5, the avalanche has already begun. It is too late for the pebbles to vote. So, Derek, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
So, it's really just the development of Mon Mothma and her character. So we know that she's probably labeled a bleeding heart among the aristocrat society, right? Because her husband, her daughter, obviously they're rich, there's a family and they're high living society. They obviously live in Coruscant, probably one of the highest towers because it's always bright. So they don't live in that. So just the development of her character, and it'll be curious enough to see if at the end of the day, when her husband and probably daughter die, what that does for her character.
And I'm wondering if they're going to die or if they're going to basically excommunicate her.
Or that too, right?
Yeah, they're going to get divorced. Yeah, because they think they like the Empire. They're so fat and happy, as Andor told us.
Yeah.
So how is she going to handle losing those things that are important to her? Yeah.
Whether they're not important to her though, whether she cuts the ties too, right? Because she's seeing that, where I would still think she'd care about her daughter, but she could always, like most people divorce their significant others when they get to that point. But that relationship with her daughter could be what, like you said, that where I'm curious where that developing and puts her character to where we see her in Rogue One, and then obviously where we get to see her in Return of the Jedi, because it's I was surprised they did what they did with bringing her in Rogue One, because we don't see her at all really in A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Maybe that's the part of her life in which she's going through the divorce.
And maybe, right? I mean, and that could be what's happening, right? So we'll see. And I'm hoping at some point we get a Jimmy cameo as Bail Organa at some point. So, point this season. So again, because, I'm curious who we're going to see in that Senate, those relationships, because again, that's what I loved about the Clone Wars. And that's what I'm loving about this. We're seeing that side of Star Wars. And like I said, I would be curious if we get a Palp cameo at this point. But if we're going to see it, I'd love to see it in the Senate.
Yeah, that would be great. All right, cool. Well, Derek, take it away for questions 4 and 5.
Yeah, so we got some really good news that we'll talk about at the after the break. So I didn't want to go into a little bit, since I think we'll have some good discussion on that. So my first question, or question 4, is, and you've kind of touched a little bit on it already, Scott. So we'll go back to you with it real quick. So are you surprised that so many of the characters died?
I am surprised that so many of the Rebel Strike Team died. I mean, we do see that not Vel, but the other girl, she survived. I can't think of her name right now. So there's a possibility that she might Cinta. I think it's Cinta. There's a possibility that Cinta might come back around because she survived and was still incognito out amongst the Imperials there on Aldhani at the Eye Festival. But of course, we saw Tamarin get blasted. Nimic got crushed by the money. It's so great that Mr. Communist was crushed by literal capitalism. I mean, come on, guys. I can't tell you how awesome that was from a narrative standpoint. It's heartbreaking for someone like me to see him, but having him die from actual money was just like, wow. Anyway,
always wear your seatbelt, kids.
Right, and when Cassian tells you to hold on, do it. But then also, Skeen died not during the heist. I mean, I guess kind of during the heist, but Cassian blasted him right in the face. Right. I think that was the one that surprised me the most. I thought that what Cassian was going to do was either turn him over to Vel or just like knock him out, tie him up, and leave him behind and claim he was dead. But why would I think that? We saw Cassian kill a fellow rebellion secret agent in cold blood, a handicapped one, no less, at the very beginning of Rogue One because he couldn't escape reliably by climbing up out of that hole. Oh my gosh, I just noticed it. Skeen talked about the only thing Cassian knows, being born in that hole, is climbing over other people to get out. He just literally does that in Rogue One. Whew, okay. The writing in the show is just so good. So yeah, I was surprised only by by Skeen dying the way that he did. But as just explained, I should not have been surprised. So yeah. Other than that, the others didn't surprise me. Although I have to admit, guys, my brain can't place what happened to Lieutenant Gorn. Did he die?
Got shot.
He got shot.
Yeah, he got
Okay,
he got shot when the guys that came down from the tower came in, and there was a standoff. And then they ended up, after they started shooting fire, it shows him get hit in like the shoulder breastplate area, and then he goes down.
So after the commander or whatever has his heart attack, they shoot Gorn. Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay, Kyle, on to you for question 4.
I wasn't surprised by the death count in this episode. I think it was a little bit projected from last episode, because I think that was what if you've watched enough Tony Gilroy things, when he starts trying to get you emotionally connected to a character, it's usually just put the red shirt on that character right then and there.
It's like whenever I watch Top Chef or Project Runway, and they take one of the contestants and they talk about their family and how much they've overcome to make it in this competition, etc. I'm like, oh, well, that person's getting eliminated this week.
Exactly. It's a little like that, but I think it fits because, again, I think the deaths that they had some meaning to them as well. I think when the commander is killed, that's kind of like the wake up call to them that they're really in something real. Then when we have our, as Scott called him, the communist killed by capitalism, I think that was foreshadowed. I thought they might let him live but be paralyzed and something like that. But yeah, I'm glad they killed him. As far as Skeen goes, Scott, I can see why you were surprised by it, because I think the reason why you were surprised by it is where we're at with Cassian's development at this point. Mm-hmm. We see we're not quite sure he's right at that point where he's just going to cold-bloodedly kill somebody for the cause. But I think this established something for that we learned for Cassian is his incredible loyalty. Even though he's still out there trying to look out for himself, he's still going to be loyal to the people who were loyal to him. And in this case, that's exactly what he was doing. He was being loyal to them and trying to protect them. It might not have been in a way that they would have agreed with, but it's the way Cassian felt it had to be handled. So I think there is a surprise factor of that, but there's not, because we know what Cassian becomes in the future. But I think you're so wrapped. This is one of the things that the show does so well. You're so wrapped up into the here and now of the show, you forget about Rogue One. In a way. And I think that's again great writing for pulling you in. So I think all the deaths fit. I don't think they were unnecessary deaths per se. And I think it's, like I said earlier, it's establishing a pattern. I think that we're going to see Cassian go through several more times through this series before we get into the events of Rogue One. Yeah, totally.
So Derrick? I have two things. The first one is answering the question. I was surprised, but not surprised. But really, I was surprised that the character Cinta, the one that's she is I'm guessing Islamic Muslim, the Indian girl, the one that kind of like sneaks through. I was surprised she didn't die. Like, I thought out of all the things, like when she was just trying to because obviously she's keeping them hostage right at the end. She then magically has a third suit on that she's able to switch into Imperial gear and just walk out. I thought something at that point would have hey, you stop there, like when she's amongst everything, and they would have all, ended up killing her at that point. So I was surprised because then obviously her and what's the other girl?
Vel. Her name's Vel.
Vel. Yeah, Vel. Obviously, I think they're going to have some recurring run-in then with Cassian down the line. Right. I feel like that'll be maybe not in the next episode immediately. Like I said, we might get a break, but I feel like that. Now, what I am surprised about, though, of what we've got from what you guys have talked about with Skeen. So here's getting where I'm thinking I might be over analyzing this, but so Luthen hired Cassian. He knew everything about Cassian. Skeen admits that he lied, that he made up to everyone else that he didn't have a brother, right? That was the whole thing. Like, that was a sad story. So I don't think Luthen hired Skeen. I feel like that was somebody else among this political party that was between Mon Mothma, Luthen, and potentially a third party involved that is bring your best people together so we can do this, right? So I think there's a third person in the political party that Luthen and Mothma are going to have to deal with. And I think that person brought Skeen in to basically he'll do the job, but he's a loose cannon in for himself and he'll steal the money. So really the rebellion won't happen because, to your point, that he'll take the money.
I don't think about that. I don't think that last part was known. I think that the person who put Skeen on the team is a behind the scenes manipulator type, but they did it because they knew Skeen would do what was necessary because they knew he was hardcore. And I think that person is Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think that's something that's going to be a major part for the next whatever the next arc for Andor is going to be.
But you don't think Saw would want the rebellion to happen?
No, I don't think Saw expected Skeen to try and pull a fast one and steal the money.
Oh, okay.
Because I think Skeen didn't entertain the idea of pulling a fast one and stealing the money until he found out that Andor was a mercenary and a criminal. And he's like, well, since there's another criminal here, he's going to do this to me, so I'm going to do it to him first, as it were.
And I don't think he believed they actually could pull it off either.
Yeah, he thought it was a fool's gambit.
So, okay. I mean, I'm fine with that, but yeah, I think there's a third person bringing in these people besides Mothma and Luthen, which could be Saw or somebody in the political side of things, because that's where I'm saying I don't think Luthen is dealing with Saw yet at this point.
Okay. All right.
So that's where I think it's somebody in the political party, because this will be my next question for you guys then. What does this mean for Luthen? What do you think his role will play out in the second half of this series?
Ooh, I have thoughts. Thoughts.
Kyle can go first.
I think what this means for Luthen is that Luthen will have a financial flexibility he has not had since the start of the rebellion, because he had been so reliant on Mon and her ways of manipulating the money and everything. He doesn't have to have that manipulated now. He's got a freedom to run the type of rebellion he wants to run. And I think if his role going forward is he's going to, I think this is where we're going to start seeing some of the political underplay of the rebellion, because we know we're getting Saw at some point, and we know that means political. I want to do it my way. This is how we rebel, kind of thing. And I think what we're going to see is the seeds we saw planted that they talked about in Rogue One, where Saw becomes more rogue as they go along and with his own agendas. And I think that's going to start here. And I think really what it's going to be is going to end up being a little bit of a power play between Luthen, Mon, and maybe Saw, and maybe another person like Derrick's talking about that we haven't necessarily been introduced yet, to the direction the rebellion is going to go into. And this is maybe where we see a Bail Organa step in, something along those lines. I think Luthen is, in my personal opinion, is going to end up being one of these characters. You're the hero until, as in The Dark Knight, you're the hero until they turn you into the villain.
Mm.
And I think we could see that with Luthen, because there's obviously a lot more to Luthen than what meets the eye. I mean, the man has Jedi and Imperial and Sith holocrons in his store. I mean, that's not exactly easy come by material, even in this time in Star Wars. So there's a lot more to Luthen than what meets the eye, and I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg with him as far as that goes. But I think, like I said, I think there's going to be a little bit of a rebellion power play that we're going to see play out, just as there's kind of a little bit of an Imperial power play playing out right now in the lower levels of the Empire as well. So it's going to be, we're going to get more political, I think, before it's all said and done with this rest of Andor going forward.
Scott?
So you guys know how in the current streaming era, Disney Lucasfilm likes to take characters from Heir to the Empire and give us kind of a remix, right? Mm-hmm. So we've gotten a little bit of a remix on Grand Admiral Thrawn, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Luthen here is the remix for Talon Card, and he is going to pull himself a little bit further away from the direct rebellion. And obviously, the guy knows how to smuggle, go undercover. He is definitely an information broker, because he's got all those smuggled artifacts, and he has tips and tricks and data about everybody. And he likes to surround himself with smooth operators like his assistant there. He is the remix Talon Card, and that's what he's going to be doing from here on out. So he's going to be a contact that is important for Cassian as Cassian's story continues, leading him on his appointed path to Rogue One. So yeah, he's the remix Talon card. I'd love to see an actual Talon card show up in the Mandoverse because that's post Return of the Jedi, and so that's the time frame that Talon card was important the first time around in the EU. But until then, Luthen is definitely a close second, and the version 2.0 of Talon card. He even has a cool spaceship.
Do you think that is his given birth name? Is Luthen?
Oh, wouldn't it be awesome if it turns out he is Talon card? This is his current alias. Now I kind of want that to be true. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm with you there. His real name's not Luthen at all. It is Talon card. First name is like Rael or something like that, isn't it? For Luthen, I gotta have to look that up.
But I know Luthen's his first name. I thought
Rael is his last name.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So, so question for both of you: quick yes or no? Because we know we're getting a season 2. Do you guys think Luthen makes it into season 2? We're at the halfway point. So do you guys think he makes it to season 2?
Nope. I think he's a season 1 character.
He makes it to season 2, solidifying his status as information broker.
Okay. I think whether he makes it to season 2 or not, it doesn't matter. At the end, I think he will die by the hands of Palp.
Ooh. By Palp himself. Oh, okay. I dig it.
Yep. So I think he'd make it to season 2 because I think they're going to want to make it for the long haul. And to your point, he could be that tie, that information broker, Scott. So I could see that. But at the same time, I feel like what Kyle said, there's going to be both internal struggles from both the Empire and the Rebellion. And at the end, whatever Luthen's going to do, because Luthen has to lose it. Right, because he's the power broker right now, essentially, right? Because he's got the 80 million. He's the one who put the heist at. Mothma backed him up. She'll get her money back or whatever. But at some point, there will have to be a power struggle amongst the rebellion folks. Luthen will lose it, but he won't give them out as Palp kills them. Palp will try to persuade him, and he won't. He won't, and that'll be his shining redemption arc. So
okay, cool. Yeah, I dig it. I like that story.
So okay. All right, so I think that ends it for our questions. So before we get into the news, why don't we take a short break and listen to the FPNet and what else we have out there?
We have a lot, so here we go. Here is what is happening around the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Guys,
Awesome.
real quick. Why are there womp rats in my guest room?
I have no recollection of these events.
Take that up with the Wookiee.
Leave you guys alone with the Drunken Gungan long enough. That's gonna be another big bill on the FPNet. I can just see it now.
That's
Hey,
okay.
look.
We'll just put another show out.
I got the.
You guys know how much Space Exterminators cost?
Look, you gave me this corporate credit card. I want to use it, right?
I used up all the funds for this month on the CG for True Believers. Come on, guys.
The special
Well, you might
effects
want to
team.
get. I was saying you might want to get your money back for that, then, Kyle.
Don't make me say
Oh.
Kevin on you.
Kevin. Oh yeah.
That's how Kevin has to now record the next the network when he's doing that. He's got to do it in that robot voice. So this is KEVIN.
Yeah, he has to get that little triple lens. Bzz, bzz, bzz.
And the
Yeah.
hat. You gotta have that. Yeah.
Yes, that's so great. Anyway, okay, so speaking of Disney, Lucasfilm, Disney Plus stuff, we have a cool interview with Andor guy, Tony Gilroy, this week that talks about how episode 7 of Star Wars Andor, coming up this Wednesday, is going to be a standalone episode, sort of a bridge between this Aldani arc and then whatever is going to be happening for the arc for the rest of the season. So yeah, over at Star Wars Newsnet, Tony Gilroy is talking about this in a headline. Tony Gilroy indicates Andor Episode 7 deviates from the arc structure of the series. So basically, he is saying that this will be its own story, and then after that, the 3 episodes following that will form the third arc for the season, and then the final 2 episodes will pair up as the season finale for season 1. So, guys, before this article came out, we already knew that Andor was going to kind of jump around to points in time from episode to episode, not just season to season, because we all know Cassian's ultimate ending over in Rogue One, but this show is about the important points in his life that lead him to those decisions. So we're going to jump around in his time frame. We've already seen him as a young child. We've seen him meet his, adopted mother. We've seen his first encounter with the rebellion, and now we've seen his first mission, if you will, for the rebellion. What do you expect is going to be happening in episode 7, Kyle?
I don't even think Cassian's going to be in it. I think it's going to focus on a certain high-strung former rent-a-cop that is kind of hanging a little too close to the edge, and I think actually is going to be a very major piece of Cassian going forward in the show. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a total shift gears by Tony Gilroy for this episode, and we focus on his story, the uncle his mother was going to go talk to, find out some of the story behind
the Sopranos episode.
Yeah, exactly. It might open up with a certain different theme music. I'm just saying, it's as long as it just doesn't end with Journey, we're good.
or end up being a whole Guns N' Roses space opera. We're good.
But I really wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens in the next episode of Andor, is that we don't even see Cassian in it. We don't see the fallout of this heist. And then when we get to the next episode, episode 8, we kind of start that closing story arc, and maybe we've jumped maybe even a year ahead from what happened at that heist and where we're at now. But I could see them taking some of these secondary characters, especially that one in particular. And I'm sorry, I can't think of the character's name off the top of my head, but you all know who I'm talking about with his blue milk and blue Cocoa Puffs. Cyril, that's right.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the episode focus on him, because I really think they're going to try to set him up as a main antagonist for Andor for the rest of this season.
That would be cool. I would actually like that, because I want to see what happens to Cyril. I'm expecting an enemy mine kind of, Agent Talos kind of thing from Rebels, where he realizes, are we the baddies? And then he goes and helps the rebellion somehow. But hey, this show has proven time and again that it's trying to be all, this isn't going to go the way that you think. So maybe Cyril isn't going to change his ways at all, and he's going to double down and become even more of a terrible person.
He's obsessed with Cassian. Yeah. He cost him his career.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, I was thinking that this was going to show us what Cassian does when he's not working on a con and he's not working for the rebellion. But now that you said that, Kyle, I think I agree with you. Episode 7 is going to be about what Cyril is doing and how he's coming along from there. And maybe even get to meet his uncle, who, hey, for all we know, could turn out to be the actual reintroduction of Talon Card.
I think Cyril is the origin story of Dengar.
Whoa. Wow. Wow. I could see it being true. Yeah, he's kind of got that look
'Cause
about him.
we don't have Dengar in Clone Wars, right? He wasn't in Clone Wars, right? I'm not
Um,
mistaken.
no, I think he was because
I think he was in Clone Wars.
isn't
Was
that
he
the
in Clone Wars?
time? Isn't that the time that that Simon Pegg did the voice for him? Was in Clone
Yeah.
Wars.
I thought that was for Rebels, but maybe he wasn't in Rebels. Maybe I'm mixing it up. But anyways, not that we couldn't get that retconned anyways, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was. Wait, guys, he was one of the bounty hunters alongside Bosk,
okay, he
and
was with them
Adventurous.
with
Yeah,
Boba. Okay,
and
okay.
with Boba. Yeah.
Darn.
All right,
So-
never mind. That's not happening.
So,
Maybe he'll be the. This is the genesis of new Jodo cast.
maybe. So, but I feel like there's something to do with that mafia flavor here going on with Uncle Tony.
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's definitely
and,
that.
and I
going
feel
on.
like there's a Joker gonna get his face burned off or something. That's what I was going with
Right.
Dengar.
Yeah.
From Cassian, and that's how he's gonna be. That. So, but I do like Kyle's side of things with Zero. I think that'd be good. I personally think it will be one of two things. It'll either be all the political side of things and what happens when we see at Coruscant and the ISB and all the behind the scene things. To your point that Scott, where the next episode could be a year or so down the line,
Mhm.
or this is the origin story of K2SO. That's honestly what I
Oh.
think it'll be.
Well, no, because I already know. I don't think it's going to be K2SO because I believe Alan Tudyk has even confirmed that he does not take part of anything in Cassian Andor until season 2.
Oh man. Okay. Well, then I'm just going with my first estimate that it'll be. Yeah, I totally agree. Nothing Cassian related, and it's gonna be Luthen or Mon Mothma or both of them together dealing with political stuff, and there'll be ISB. I did like the comment that somebody feels like based off this Mon Mothma conversation about the boot to the throat of all Gormans. And that they were saying that this article was saying that it was a nod to both Sly Moore and Grand Moff Tarkin. So maybe we'll get some cameos for Grand Moff Tarkin next episode. Anyways, Scott,
we know they already have the assets for a CGI Tarkin. So
yep. So what do you think? Or I could just recast. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a recast at this point. So,
yeah,
but Scott,
technically, Genevieve O'Reilly is not the first Mon Mothma, so we've already had a recast on this show.
Yep.
But
Scott,
yeah, I'm sticking with my prediction that it's going to be about agreeing with Kyle. It's going to be about Cyril, and I think that we will see him meet up with his uncle, and it will be somebody in the Star Wars underworld that is important to us as fans, maybe not so well known to the broad audience. And that could be a great opportunity to, if not reintroduce Talon Card, reintroduce somebody like, I don't know, Prince Shizor.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they all call him Uncle Tony for some reason, but
Right? Figure that out.
If we have a character named Meadow in the next episode, guys, we're having a serious discussion.
There we go. And if it's at Dex's Diner's pizza joint or Italian shop, we're in really big trouble.
Oh man, that would be so great! Star Wars pizza, baby. Good time.
Well, we got blue milk and Cocoa Puffs, so why not?
We do.
So.
Okay, cool. Well, it's time for Derrick's favorite part of the show. What Star Wars t-shirts are we wearing this week? Derrick, what are you wearing?
I feel like I wore this on the last one, but I love this shirt. It's actually surprisingly very comfortable, and it's my weekend shirt. I love wearing it either Saturday or Sunday. And it's clean. Don't worry. It's always clean.
Sure. Yes, it is a collapsed at Walker with the caption, "Not today."
So, but I actually had an interesting story of this shirt today. So I've been wearing this all day, obviously. We went out and did stuff. Today we hired one of those pet grooming mobiles where they come to your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were coming home from Costco early this morning, or morning run this afternoon, and we saw this van out there. We're like, oh, let's call them. Well, luckily she had an opening this afternoon, so we were able to get it in. Well, I mean, it's Kentucky, Lexington. I feel it's pretty open. Like she, comes knocking at the door, like, hey, I'm here, all that stuff. Well, my wife invites her in real quick just to introduce her to the dogs, right? So they can sniff her and all that stuff before they do that. And she's like, oh, I love your shirt, the AT-AT. And then, so obviously she knows Star Wars at this point, right? And she points to her arm and she's like, yeah, I got a tattoo of Star Wars. And it's a picture of the Death Star, but it's the seed or the center pit of an avocado. So she had it on her forearm there. So I laughed. So Christina's like, oh, that's because you can't tell from far away. You would think it was just the pit or the seed, right, from an avocado, but it's actually a detailed out Death Star. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So
That's great. Avocado destruction ray engage.
there you
Commence green ignition. All right, Kyle, what Star Wars shirt do you have on there?
Okay, so I have to throw myself on the mercy of the Imperial T-shirt court. Laundry's been a little bit hard to come by in the last couple of weeks. However, I did wear a shirt that I know Derek Marsh will appreciate because it is the Big O. It's showtime.
Yes. There you go. One of
if you're not-
Toonami's originals back then. So
Yeah, very much had a Batman the animated series kind of feel to it. I own both seasons on Blu-ray. It is a great classic from the late 90s, early 2000s anime. Like I said, laundry's been a little hard to come by, guys. I apologize, but I'm hoping the T-shirt Senate can give me a stay of execution for this week.
you're good. Don't worry. So.
We don't have enough votes to execute you because we don't have a quorum. Nobody comes to the Senate anymore.
Well, yeah. You know, if Nathan were here, I think I'd be a goner. But you know,
Yeah, you'd be thrown out the airlock, right? So
Yeah.
now the question is, do you have anything on your desk real quick that Star Wars you could pull up, because you know you could pull a mullet, a lethal mullet.
in fact, I have this thermal detonator from Galaxy's Edge.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay. They're good.
The best Coca-Cola in the galaxy.
It'll blow your mind. So
Yes, it will.
All right.
All right, well, for me, it's spooky season. We're in the heart of October. We're recording this on October the 15th in the year of our Lord 2022, and I'm wearing my Stormtrooper helmet, classic Stormtrooper helmet, made out of little tiny jack-o'-lanterns. So it is the most Star Warsy and Halloween-y shirt that I have, so I decided to just, do the old blendering today and mix the two together for this episode. If you guys out there want to get your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt or mousepad or coffee mug, or a t-shirt or mousepad or coffee mug for any of the great Fandom Podcast Network shows, please head on over to tpublic.com and search up Fandom Podcast Network in the search bar, and you can help support us. Every little bit helps.
And hey, it's only October 15th, but before you know it, Christmas is going to be here. So they make great Christmas gifts for your family.
Yeah, account
Absolutely.
for shipping. Account for shipping time, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, that's right. Order ahead. Plan ahead, people. Plan ahead. All right. Well, Derek, why don't you let people know where they can find the show out there on the old interwebs?
Yep. So you can find us on the FPNet.podbean.com master feed, which is obviously off the Podbean app. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. You can find us on Facebook, which is the big thing we like to talk to the listeners out there, and you can find us all there and posting fun links or videos, memes, all sorts of stuff, which is the What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast Facebook group. You can email us to ask any questions, give us any comments, feedback at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com, as well as the Twitter at What Wars, which Scott runs, Instagram, which is part of the thing that Kyle runs on the Fandom Podcast Network, and then the Apple Podcasts, or really any of the podcast reviews applications out there for any, like I said, where you're downloading us or watching us. Obviously, you can also go to YouTube and find us. We like to post these up there when we get a chance. So go over to the podcast, the YouTube page, and subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network there. But for the podcast reviews, it's really nice if you leave us a 5-star review, because obviously the more stars we get, it obviously helps in regards to finding us in the search feed, especially in the Star Wars podcast, because there's probably hundreds when you go out there. So the more we can stay in the top 100 or top 50 would be wonderful. So we really appreciate that when you leave some positive reviews. And obviously the more stars you give us, especially 5 out of 5, is great. So appreciate the listeners.
Yep. Thanks, guys, so much.
I'd settle for us being in the top 1,000, really, to be honest.
There's that many Star Wars podcasts, so yes.
Yes. Yeah. There's a blue million of them. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
so you're
Kyle,
saying there's a chance.
they're saying there's a chance. Kyle, we were so glad you got to join us, and that you were able to even out the cockpit. The ship doesn't fly quite right when you don't have 3 people in the chairs.
The Drunken Gungan has its own reputation. So even if it's flying a little crooked, most people think that's the normal part of it anyway. Guys, too, I apologize. I apologize for any porg droppings you might find in your quarters. I just, they don't come out of sheets real well, guys. But you know what? They still come out easier than womp rat droppings. So I'm just.
Ew.
We'll get Nathan to clean that up when he gets back.
Yep,
So.
that's his punishment for missing the show.
It is, and guys, I gotta tell you too that when it gets into the fur, not good.
Not my cape closet.
That Amazon order for Breeze you requested, Scott, came in too. I don't know what that's for, but
that's really good news. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on this episode. As always, let us know if you have any thoughts or comments or suggestions, because we do this because we want to entertain you guys. And please always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. Nathan's not here for me to get him to do the punch it, so I guess I'll just have to punch it myself unless you've got a quote or something you want to head out on, Kyle.
Let me think on this. No, not really. Punch it works for me. So, ladies and gentlemen, punch it.